It's time to talk about the worst UFC champion of every division, and we're talking about past 2015, so I'm not going to be bringing Matt Serra and Pat Miletich and all these NPCs back from the Stone Age. We're talking about modern UFC in the last 10 years. Who is the worst champion of every division? Now, I'm not going to be rating this off of just their skill set. I'm going to be looking at outside factors. Did they talk a massive game? Were they a duck? Were they terrible and they had one good performance to win the belt? Those are all factors. Did their wins age well? So with that out of the way, let's get right into the video, starting off with Flyweight. None other than Henry Cejudo. I think Henry Cejudo is the worst Flyweight champion. Now, that might be a hot take because he did beat Demetrius Johnson, but let's not pretend like that wasn't an arguable robbery, especially when you factor in that Demetrius Johnson was immediately traded to one championship after losing the belt to Cejudo. How convenient for them to reward Cejudo with a very close split decision over him. And he only defended his Flyweight title one time against the skeleton of TJ Dillashaw. I know Dillashaw was on roids, but I don't believe it was other than just to make weight, because he took something called Procrit in order to make weight. But yeah, man, Henry Cejudo was not a good Flyweight champ. In fact, if you think he was a good Flyweight champ, name me his Flyweight wins. Outside of DJ and TJ, name his Flyweight wins. Who are they? I'll wait. I can name a couple, but let's be real. Most people don't know who Henry Cejudo beat at Flyweight. Wilson Hayes, Sergio Pettis, decent wins. Husier Formiga, decent wins. But it's like Henry Cejudo was a mediocre fighter coming up in the Flyweight division. He got a win over Demetrius Johnson, an arguable robbery. Good performance, though. Good performance. But listen, bro. He lost to Joseph Benavidez, and we saw what Figueiredo did to Benavidez. Either way, I think Henry Cejudo is the worst Flyweight champion that there has been. Some people could say Figueiredo, some people could say Moreno. I think those guys are better. They're still at the top of their game. Cejudo got one good win in Flyweight, then he beat the skeleton and TJ Dillashaw, and then he never fought in the division again. So for me, that packs him as the worst Flyweight champion of the entire bunch. Let's get on to Bantamweight. It's obvious. It's Cody Garbrandt. This guy is one of the worst champions of all time. And it's a shame because Cody Garbrandt looked like he had good promise, a bright future after dethroning Dominic Cruz. And what I am going to say was one of the most overrated title wins against Dominic Cruz that I've ever seen. People talk about this fight like Cody Garbrandt absolutely schooled Dominic Cruz and made him look like a fool. That's not at all what happened. Go back and watch the fight. In fact, the fight was so close, it was scored a 48-46, only a 10-8 round because he dropped Cruz multiple times in a round, but it was a 48-46. It was 3 rounds to 2. Cruz didn't get brutalized. The only difference was he was getting caught by Cody Garbrandt because Cody Garbrandt was 3 times the speed of Cruz. Cruz was like an old man out there. But people glaze this when, like, Cody Garbrandt beat Cruz 50-41. Like, he just didn't, man. It was a close fight. Look at his face after the fight. He got pieced up low-key. Lucky Dominic Pillow Hands Cruz didn't have power in that fight. But since winning the title against Cruz on December 30th of 2016, Cody Garbrandt is a staggering 3-7. He's only won 3 times in the last 9 years. And he seems to be going through a midlife crisis. This dude got a sword tattoo over his eye. One of the worst tattoos I've ever seen. And this is not a personal attack on Cody, but man, talk about a career that dwindled out of control, right? And I think he's also one of the most unskilled UFC champions of all time. You want to talk about a guy that is the embodiment of having talent but no skill? This guy has all the speed in the world. He has all the physical attributes, but good grief, his skill just went out the window. No chin, no defense, no technique. Just even his wrestling's been exposed. It's like, dude, Cody Garbrandt we just have to accept it. He was never really that good. He had a once-in-a-lifetime performance against Dominic Cruz, and I thought that performance was extremely overrated. And here we are. He's 3-7 since 2016, and he's now 34 years old. I think he should retire. He's calling out Sean O'Malley recently. Pretty embarrassing, but yes, I think Cody Garbrandt, it's a no-brainer. He's the worst Bantamweight champion of all time, and that's not really up for debate. Let's get on to the worst Featherweight champion, Conor McGregor. Now, there isn't much to say about Conor McGregor as a featherweight, right? He rose to the rankings 7-0 at featherweight, beating guys like Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, and Chad Mendes for the interim belt. Ultimately, fighting Jose Aldo to KO him in 13 seconds. And this guy worked his ass off, right? He worked his entire career to get to the featherweight strap. To guess what? Never fight in a division again and never defend a belt. In fact, I'll do you one better. Not only did he not defend his featherweight belt, he never defended his lightweight belt either. Conor McGregor is allergic to defending belts. That's just a fact. And am I going to say his featherweight run was overrated? I mean, it's not the best wins. Young Dustin Poirier, decent win. You know, Max Holloway when he was like 12 years old. It's an okay win. Marcus Brimage, Diego Brandao, Dennis Seaver. These guys weren't great. And then you look at the fact, sure, he was dominant, but he went on, right, to not defend his belt and just go on the lightweight. He also stalled the division out for an entire year to add that onto it, which makes him an even worse champion. Any champion who stalls their division out for quote-unquote greatness and just holds it back while he goes in for double champ status, that's not a good champion. So yes, I think Conor McGregor, out of all the featherweight champs we've had, he is the worst one. Even Ilia Topuria, who's trying to speedrun his UFC career, even he defended the UFC belt at featherweight before moving up. He even did it. He's trying to one-up Conor. We all know the similarities between their careers, but either way, yes, Conor McGregor, in my opinion, is the worst featherweight champion of all time. Let's get on to lightweight. None other than the Underground King. And I don't think this is up for debate. Eddie Alvarez is the worst lightweight champion of all time. Yes, he's worse than Conor McGregor. Let me explain why. First of all, he got a title shot off of 2 split decision wins. Let me repeat that. He got a title shot off of 2 split decision wins over Gilbert Melendez and Anthony Pettis. And I believe the Anthony Pettis one, you could argue, could have went the other way. He then fluked the KO over Rafael dos Anjos. Now, why am I calling that a fluke? Well, I don't know if you guys heard the story, but in the locker room, while doing whatever before he came out, Rafael dos Anjos allegedly passed out due to a bad weight cut. And then he ultimately went into the octagon against Eddie Alvarez and got KO'd, right? He then went on to have one of the worst championship performances in the history of the UFC. He looks so... Now, you could chalk it up to McGregor being great, right? But he looks so unbelievably garbage against Conor McGregor. It was one of the worst performances I've ever seen by any champion ever in the history of the UFC. And let's be real, that loss against McGregor has aged poorly. Guess who Conor McGregor's only win at lightweight ever in the UFC is? It's against Eddie Alvarez. His other 3 fights at lightweight against Dustin Poirier 2 times and against Khabib, he lost all 3 of them. Oh, and he got finished in all 3 of them. Conor McGregor's only win at lightweight was against Eddie Alvarez. Say what you want, Conor McGregor before the boxing and before the money, he was a different beast. I get that, but let's not pretend like Eddie Alvarez didn't go on to get busted up and beaten up by absolute freaking jobbers in one championship. Guys you never even heard of were piecing this guy up. So yes, Eddie Alvarez, in my opinion, is the worst UFC lightweight champion of all time. And I don't think that's really debatable. I mean, the guy got the belt off of 2 split decision wins, an arguable fluke in his title fight win, a first round KO over a guy coming off a horrible weight cut. And then he proceeds to lose the belt in one of the most embarrassing performances in the history of the UFC. And ultimately left the UFC to go to 1 after that. So yes, no disrespect to Eddie Alvarez. He's a champion of multiple organizations, but no doubt he is the worst UFC lightweight champion there ever was, at least in the modern era. Let's get on to welterweight. I think it's Belal Muhammad. Listen, this guy has the most annoying fan base. I've never seen a fan base make so many excuses for a fighter out of any other fighter. I've never seen it, dude. Belal Muhammad seems to have this random cult fan base that just rides or die with this guy. No matter what you say, they have an answer for it. Point out the fact that this guy was inactive from 2023 until now, 2025, fighting 1 time per year. Oh, he was waiting on a title shot. Oh, he had an injury. Oh, this and that. It's always an excuse for Belal Muhammad, right? Not to mention, this guy couldn't even defend the title a single time. All that shit he talked on Twitter, all that crap that he would go up and beat Driscus, as he calls him. He would go up and beat Sean Strickland, right? All that garbage he talked about, how he was going to destroy JDM, outstrike him with Canelo hands, and that he was going to beat the division, and he roasted Kamaru Usman, which was hilarious. Listen, I am all for the fighters making the sport fun and talking trash, right? Belal Muhammad just ain't it, bro. Whenever Belal Muhammad talks trash, it makes me want to fall asleep, dude. I start seeing little Z's form in the corner of my eye, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? Oh, Belal's trash talking. Oh, everything's okay, bud. Just hang in there. But yes, Belal Muhammad is just the worst welterweight champion in modern day history. It's just a fact. When you factor in all the shit he talked, when you factor in also that his wins leading up to the title are aging poorly. Yes, I know. And even his title wins aging poorly. Yes, I know. His win against Sean Brady aged well, right? That's the only one that aged well. Leon Edwards, since losing the title to Belal Muhammad, went on to get completely wrecked by Sean Brady and embarrassed. Wonder Boy, who he beat on his way to the title, is now 1-5 in his last 6. Should be 2-4, but either way, A lot of losses for Wonder Boy, right? Who else? Vicente Luque getting easily finished and embarrassed these days. Another win that didn't age well. Gilbert Burns, 0-3 since fighting Bilal Muhammad. You see what I'm saying? None of these guys' wins are aging well unless it's Sean Brady. That's the only one that aged well. Fair enough. He had a great win against Sean Brady. But when you factor in the amount of trash this guy's talked, how inactive he's been, this guy's wasting his prime in his mid-30s to sit around and not fight. And I can't get behind Bilal Muhammad. He also has one of the most boring fight styles you could ever imagine watching. Like, if you ever want to introduce somebody to the sport, the last thing you want to show them is a Bilal Muhammad fight, unless it's Bilal versus Vicente Luque or Bilal versus JDM. That's acceptable. But all of his other fights, just stop. Just stop. With that being said, nothing personal against Bilal. I'm sure he saves puppies in his free time, and he's a great guy. As a man, Bilal's a pretty stand-up guy. He takes care of the people around him. He's pretty loyal to his heritage. I respect that. But as a fighter and all the smack he talked and he couldn't even defend the belt a single time, listen, man, I got to call it what it is. This guy's a phony, and he got worked by JDM and couldn't even hold the title. One single defense after all that shit he talked. Let's get on to middleweight. It's Michael Bisping. It's no doubt. I mean, come on, dude. Michael Bisping is the worst middleweight champion of all time. Now, let's get what everybody's going to say out of the way. Everybody's going to say, dude, you don't understand. Bisping was fighting with one eye. I respect Bisping for fighting with one eye. But that doesn't change the fact that he's a duck, and he was a terrible champion. Let's talk about it. Michael Bisping ultimately won the title against Luke Rockhold at UFC 199 by, some would argue, left hook fluke KO, because Luke Rockhold was overconfident. Say what you want about Luke Rockhold. He was good. He was great. But he fumbled the bag. Michael Bisping KO'd him. Fair enough. Michael Bisping was the better man. He got it done. However, once Michael Bisping became the champion, this is what made him the worst middleweight champion of all time. He declined fighting guys like Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker, who were at the top of the division at that point, right? He's like, he talked about it. He was going to fight. He said he was going to fight Whittaker. He said he would fight Yoel. Didn't fight neither of them. Instead, he elected to fight a 46-year-old Dan Henderson, who, by the way, was ranked number 13 at the time, and who arguably won the fight and beat Michael Bisping's ass. Go back and watch that fight. If Michael Bisping is lucky, it wasn't damage-based scoring back at UFC 204 whenever he beat Dan Henderson. He's lucky, because he would have lost that fight. Dan Henderson beat his ass and made his face look like it went through a meat grinder. That's just true. So he beats Dan Henderson, defends his title, right? Then he goes on to talk about how he's going to fight Yoel Romero. He's going to fight Robert Whittaker. Those guys are next. Well, here comes Georges St. Pierre. Now, I can't blame Michael Bisping for taking a money fight against GSP, but don't say you're going to defend against Yoel and Whittaker if you're not going to defend against Yoel and Whittaker. That makes you what we call a duck, my friend. Yes, Michael Bisping is one of the biggest ducks in UFC history, ducking Whittaker, ducking Romero, ultimately to get finished by GSP at UFC 217, rear naked choked. And then 2 weeks later, he takes on Kelvin Gastelum in a main event after just getting CTE against Bisping, gets KO'd, retires, and never fights again. So with all that out of the way, Michael Bisping, in my humble opinion, respect to him for fighting with one eye for half his UFC career. He is the worst UFC champion at middleweight we've ever seen, and I don't think it's really debatable. I think Luke Rockhold was a better champion. Chris Weidman was a better champion. Anderson Silva, obviously. Israel Adesanya, Dricus du Plessis, all these guys were better champion. Even Robert Whittaker, who couldn't even defend the belt. At least he fought the best guys. You got to respect it. So yes, Michael Bisping's the worst middleweight champion of all time. Jamal Hill might be... Him and Cody Garbrandt are running a tight race for the two worst champions in UFC modern history. They're running a tight race. Now, Jamal Hill was put together at a Mickey Mouse title fight because Dana White was salty about Magomed Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz fighting to a draw for the title. So he threw Jamal Hill in there with 43-year-old Glover and what I'm going to call one of the most overrated performances in a title fight I've ever seen. I know I said that about the Dominic Cruz, Cody Garbrandt fight, but this is also an extremely overrated one. Jamal Hill couldn't even knock down a 43-year-old Glover coming off a war with Yuri Prohaska over 5 rounds. Sure, he beat him pillar to post. Sure, Glover was getting his ass beat, but let's not pretend like Jamal wasn't bleeding as well. Jamal was getting hit too. And this guy's one of the most flat-footed fighters in UFC history. Dyslexia is slipping in, boys. My bad. But Jamal Hill is the worst light heavyweight champion of all time. And the fact that you look back and say this guy was champion is kind of funny. Listen, all respect to Jamal Hill. Recently, he's come out and said, I haven't been at the same level anymore. I'm not that same guy. But while he was champion, he was talking a lot of shit, so we got to call it what it is. This guy was a terrible champion. He won the belt. He vacated, right? Respect to him for vacating. That part of his championship was good. When I'm talking about Jamal Hill being the worst light heavyweight champion, I'm talking about his winning championship performance. It's overrated, and if you look at his skill set, he's just one of the worst fighters at light heavyweight. Even right now, I'd pick most guys in the top 15 to beat him. And again, Glover Teixeira was coming off that war with Yuri, 43 years old. Jamal Hill came back after his injury, right? His Achilles injury, to fight Alex Pereira, talked a lot of shit in the buildup, only to get brutally KO'd by Alex Pereira. He comes back, right? He gets knocked out again by Yuri Prohaska the next year in his comeback fight. And then recently talked a bunch of shit about Khalil Roundtree, said he was going to school him, Khalil's not on his level, and then got 50-45. So respect to Jamal Hill for recently admitting that he's not on that level anymore. I do respect that. But if we're calling it what it is, this guy is the worst light heavyweight champion of all time, barring injuries, bar whatever you want to call it. He just is. He's flat-footed. He has no grappling. He has no wrestling. His striking's goofy. His best win outside of Glover is over Looney Tunes Johnny Walker, who has been KO'd by the entire division at this point. So, yes, I'm marking Jamal Hill as the worst champion. And heavyweight, drum roll, please. It's Jon Jones. Come on, guys. Jon Jones is the worst heavyweight champion of all time. Now, remember at the beginning of the video, we're not talking about raw skill. Obviously, we're talking about what Jon Jones did during his heavyweight reign to make him the worst heavyweight champion of all time. Starting off with the fact that this guy stalled the heavyweight division for 2.5 years to bring us all through a circus so he can fight a retired firefighter. That's right. He had an active interim champion willing to fight him, begging to fight him. Tom Aspinall, one of the most dangerous guys he'd ever face. Of course, Jon Jones knows he's going to lose. He's not going to take the fight. He elects, and the UFC allows this, right? So you have to put some critique on the UFC as well. But he elects to fight 42-year-old retired washed-up firefighter Stipe Miocic when he had an active interim champion, which is one of the most embarrassing things that the UFC's ever put on. In no world, if there's an active interim champion, should the heavyweight guy fight anyone outside of his interim champion. That should be in everybody's contract. If you have an interim champion, I don't care who the money fight is, you have to fight him. Jon Jones, despite there being an interim champion in his division, Tom Aspinall, he elected to fight 42-year-old Stipe Miocic. And guess what? It took him damn near 4 rounds to finish Stipe. Embarrassing. And I think his win over Cyril Gane is overrated as well. Listen, people are going to call me a Jon Jones hater, and fair enough, I am. I can admit that. But, guys, let's look at this Cyril Gane win for what it was. This was a tailor-made matchup for Jon Jones to go out there and dominate and destroy Cyril Gane. Cyril Gane, a guy with pillow hands at heavyweight, a guy who has no grappling, and a guy who's just not dangerous. A perfect matchup for Jon Jones to go out there, take him down, and bully him on the ground. That's exactly what we saw. And then his only other fight was against Stipe. And he shamelessly turned down $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall, confirmed by Ariel Helwani. And you know what? As much of a weasel as Ariel is, I believe Ariel Helwani. Jon Jones turned down a staggering $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall because winning is this guy's entire identity. And he knew that if he were to lose to Tom Aspinall, which was a very high chance, that he would be irrelevant because people only like Jon Jones. He only has fans because he's undefeated. That's the only thing his fans can cling on to. This guy's done every steroid under the sun. He's ducked every hard fight he's ever had to fight against Ngannou, against fighting. He said he wouldn't fight DC at heavyweight, against Aspinall, one of the most blatant duckings ever. He didn't want to rematch Dominic Reyes, went cry about his loss to Dominic Reyes for 3 years. He knew he lost that fight. So yes, Jon Jones is by far the worst heavyweight champion of all time. And that's ultimately who I think are the worst champions in every division, at least in the last 10 years, guys. I'm not, like I said, I'm not counting the old heads. We're not counting guys from 1997. That's just not fun to talk about because then it would be obvious. Matt Serra would be the welterweight one because he's the worst welterweight champion. But either way, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Am I just being a hater, or do you guys agree or disagree? And yeah, that's about it. Peace.